Scene 2 of I'm a Lesbian Mentor shifts the focus from therapy and personal healing to the academic world, introducing a complex and emotionally loaded relationship between Professor Chanel and her teaching assistant, Avi. The dynamic here is layered with intimacy, secrecy, and power imbalance, all of which are essential to the drama of the scene. It begins with Chanel trying to distance herself, clearly aware of the risks they face, while Avi resists with emotional intensity, insisting on the authenticity of their love. Chanel tells Avi, "We need to stop seeing each other," grounding her decision in the reality of their professional relationship. She is Avi's academic advisor. Avi is her teaching assistant, and the optics of their involvement threaten both their reputations and careers. For Chanel, who is being considered for tenure, this is especially pressing. For Avi, it feels like abandonment, a cold calculation that disregards their feelings. Their dialogue captures the push and pull of duty versus desire, with Chanel's repeated "I'm sorry" underlining her guilt, and Avi's persistent refusal to accept the breakup underscoring her vulnerability. The scene resonates deeply with LGBTQ culture because it reflects the ways queer relationships, especially those between women, have often been forced into secrecy and burdened by external judgment. The fear Chanel expresses, that people are starting to talk, is familiar to many lesbians who have had to navigate environments where visibility can mean career jeopardy, social ostracization, or personal loss. Her excuse to Dr. Lewis about hugging Avi because her grandmother had died encapsulates the necessity of fabrication, of creating a heteronormative explanation for a moment of tenderness. LGBTQ people across generations can relate to such quick thinking, the survival instinct of disguising a relationship as something platonic, familial, or circumstantial. Avi's response, bringing her real grief into the moment, highlights the emotional dissonance. While Chanel treats their intimacy as a liability, Avi sees it as authentic love, something worth defending even against institutional pressure. Lesbians in particular may relate to Avi's protest, but "we're in love," because it echoes the frustration of having to argue that a relationship between two women is as real and valid as any heterosexual one. Historically, lesbian love has been dismissed as a phase, an indulgence, or something less serious than a heterosexual pairing. Chanel's pragmatic approach, while rooted in genuine concern for Avi's academic career, carries the sting of this dismissal, forcing Avi into the position of having to defend the validity of her feelings. This speaks to the broader LGBTQ experience of constantly needing to prove that queer love is real, powerful, and deserving of recognition. Women in general can also relate to this scene because it reflects universal struggles between personal desire and professional responsibility. Many women, regardless of sexuality, have had to weigh their careers against relationships, especially in male-dominated environments where missteps are judged more harshly. Chanel's calculation, worrying about tenure, the whispers of colleagues, the perception of impropriety, reflects the double scrutiny that women in positions of authority often face. While male professors historically engaged in relationships with female students or assistants with far fewer consequences, women professors risk their credibility, respect, and legitimacy. For Chanel, a queer woman in academia, the stakes are even higher, as her sexuality itself may already mark her for bias in tenure decisions or departmental politics. The question of why society hates seeing two women in love comes into sharp focus here. Chanel and Avi's relationship is scrutinized not just because of the professional context, but also because it involves two women. Same-sex relationships often attract more suspicion, more whispers, more invasive questions than heterosexual ones. Society has long been uncomfortable with women directing love, desire, and devotion toward each other rather than toward men. This discomfort is rooted in patriarchy. Two women in love are beyond male control, beyond male validation, and therefore threatening to structures that center heterosexuality as the norm. Chanel knows this, which is why she emphasizes professional appearances and the importance of Avi's academic future. She isn't wrong. LGBTQ people have historically faced real consequences for being found out in settings like universities, which are not always as progressive as they appear. The power dynamics in the scene add another layer of relevance to LGBTQ culture. Chanel admits she was far too capricious in not stopping the relationship when she first felt chemistry. This acknowledgement shows awareness of the risks of a mentor-mentee romance, which carries potential for exploitation or perceived coercion. Yet, the scene also complicates this by showing Avi as someone with agency, pushing back against Chanel's attempts to end things. This duality is significant because many queer women recognize the tension between mentorship and romance in their own lives. In communities where role models are scarce, admiration and attraction can blur. The line between mentor and lover can be thin, not because of predation, but because of the intensity of identification and longing. Chanel and Avi's dynamic encapsulates this complexity, showing both the dangers of crossing professional boundaries and the genuine emotions that can emerge when two women connect deeply. The idea of whether women should leave men for their girl best friends connects loosely here as well. While this particular scene doesn't involve a man, it dramatizes the choice women often face between authenticity and social approval. Chanel feels compelled to choose social approval, tenure, reputation, respectability, while Avi insists on authenticity, prioritizing their love. This is a broader metaphor for the choices queer women have faced for decades: remain closeted for survival, or live openly and risk repercussions. For some, this has meant leaving male partners when they realized their truest selves were with women. For others, it has meant painful compromises. Chanel's decision to end things is not about leaving a man, but about leaving love for the sake of conformity, which parallels the compromises many women have made in different contexts. Another way the scene resonates with queer audiences is through the emotional tone of resistance. Avi refuses to accept that their relationship is disposable, saying no when Chanel tries to frame it as temporary. This mirrors the broader LGBTQ resistance to erasure. Queer people have long had to fight against the narrative that their relationships are fleeting or secondary. Avi's insistence asserts that her love is as serious as any heterosexual one, even if Chanel is too afraid to acknowledge it openly. This defiance is both heartbreaking and empowering, a reminder of how queer love often survives in spite of external pressures. The ending of the scene, where Chanel says, "What about later on down the line? Only time will tell," leaves the door open. This ambiguity is a hallmark of many lesbian narratives, where endings are uncertain, often bittersweet. It reflects the reality that queer relationships have historically existed in the margins, shaped by secrecy, institutional barriers, and the possibility of renewal later in life when circumstances change. For viewers, especially lesbians, this resonates as both frustrating and familiar, the sense of unfinished business, of love deferred but not necessarily extinguished. Analyzing the scene further, one can see it as a commentary on the institutional challenges faced by queer women in academia and beyond. Chanel's pursuit of tenure represents not just professional ambition, but survival in a system that scrutinizes women relentlessly. Avi's reliance on departmental approval for her PhD mirrors the precariousness of young queer people whose futures can be shaped by the biases of authority figures. Their relationship embodies both the intimacy and the obstacles that define LGBTQ life. Love and desire are real, but so are the risks of exposure. In conclusion, Scene 2 of My Lesbian Mentor is not simply about a breakup, it's about the collision of love and survival in a context that magnifies risk for queer women. Lesbians relate to Avi's resistance, her demand that their love be recognized as real. Women in general relate to Chanel's pragmatism, the painful calculation of career versus intimacy. Society's discomfort with women in love is reflected in the whispers, the need for excuses, the double standard of scrutiny. And the question of whether women should leave men for women's love transforms here into a larger question: should anyone sacrifice their authenticity for approval? Chanel thinks yes, at least for now. Avi insists no. The tension between them is the tension of queer existence itself, caught between the pull of love and the push of survival, always negotiating between what feels true and what feels safe. This makes the scene both deeply personal and universally resonant, an honest portrayal of the struggles that define LGBTQ relationships in environments still governed by heteronormative and patriarchal norms.